You are holding 3 red berries. One may be food. One may give you a night of stomach cramps so violent that you begin negotiating directly with the universe. And one may stop your heart. They are growing on similar bushes. They smell almost the same. There is no label, no field guide, no phone signal, no emergency room. Behind you, a child is crying from hunger. The hunters returned with nothing. The roots gathered yesterday are gone, and the group needs food before the sun disappears. Everyone is looking at the berries. Then, everyone looks at you. So, how do you decide? This was not a rare puzzle for ancient humans. It was the normal condition of being alive. A modern supermarket has already performed thousands of safety decisions before you enter the building. Someone identified the species, cultivated the safe variety, harvested the correct part, processed it properly, transported it under controlled conditions, and placed it beneath lighting designed to make lettuce feel unusually successful. Ancient humans had none of that. They lived in landscapes containing thousands of plants. Some were nutritious, some were useless. Some were edible only during one season. Some were safe only after being peeled, crushed, soaked, heated, or fermented. Some could heal you in a small dose and kill you in a larger one. Some looked almost identical to harmless plants. And some tasted perfectly pleasant right before creating a medical emergency in a world without medicine. So how did ancient humans know which plants were safe to eat? The honest answer is uncomfortable. At first, they did not. There was no moment when the first humans suddenly understood the entire forest. Plant knowledge was built slowly, through senses, observation, cautious experimentation, food processing, social learning, and mistakes that were sometimes fatal. The individual human could not test the natural world safely, but a community could remember what happened. And over generations, memory became one of the most important survival technologies our species ever developed. The first defense was already inside the mouth. Taste is not only about pleasure. It is part of an ancient chemical warning system. Sweetness often signals energy-rich sugars. Saltiness can indicate useful minerals. Sourness may warn of unripe or spoiled food. Bitterness frequently appears in plants containing defensive chemicals. Plants cannot run from hungry animals. So many of them fight chemically. They produce compounds that taste unpleasant, disturb digestion, damage organs, interfere with the nervous system, or make the animal that ate them deeply reconsider its relationship with leaves. Humans inherited taste systems shaped by this conflict. Bite into something intensely bitter, and the immediate reaction is often rejection. The face tightens. The tongue pushes outward. The body seems to say that whatever just entered the mouth should continue its journey in the opposite direction. Children are often especially suspicious of bitter foods. This can be frustrating when attempting to introduce a vegetable, but from an evolutionary perspective, a child who rejected unfamiliar bitterness may have had a better chance of avoiding dangerous plants. The refusal to eat dinner may contain a very old survival system, but bitterness was only a warning. It was not a laboratory test. Many poisonous plants are bitter. Many safe plants are also bitter. Some useful medicines taste terrible. Some harmless foods contain defensive compounds in quantities the human body can tolerate. And some extremely dangerous plants do not advertise themselves with an unpleasant flavor at all. A poisonous root may taste mild. A dangerous berry may be sweet. A toxin may have no obvious smell. Nature did not design plant flavor as a convenient human safety guide. The taste system only improved the odds. It did not guarantee the answer. That distinction matters because one popular image of ancient survival is far too simple. A person sees an unfamiliar plant. They smell it, touch it to the skin, taste a tiny amount, wait several minutes, then eat slightly more. This resembles the so-called universal edibility tests found in modern survival discussions. But there is no universal procedure that can make an unknown wild plant safe. Some toxins act slowly. Some require more than one exposure. Some accumulate inside the body. Some damage the liver or kidneys without causing an immediate burning sensation. Some plants irritate the skin but are edible after preparation. Others cause no skin reaction and remain dangerous when swallowed. Ancient people probably did sometimes experiment with small quantities, especially when entering unfamiliar environments. But cautious tasting was never enough by itself, and it would be extremely dangerous to treat this story as instructions for testing unknown plants today. The second clue came from animals. A bird lands on a branch and eats a berry. A monkey tears open a fruit. A deer browses on leaves. A wild pig digs up a root. To a hungry human, this is useful information. Animals reveal where food exists. They show which fruits are ripe. They expose hidden roots. They return seasonally to productive trees. Following them can turn a confusing landscape into a map of possible meals. Our primate relatives also show sophisticated plant knowledge. Chimpanzees consume a broad variety of fruits, leaves, seeds, insects, and other resources. Some have been observed seeking unusual plants when suffering from parasites or illness. That suggests the ancestors of humans did not begin as botanically ignorant creatures. Our lineage inherited millions of years of primate experience with plant selection. But watching animals contains a dangerous trap. Their bodies are not our bodies. A bird may eat a berry that poisons a human. A goat can consume leaves that would make a person seriously ill. An animal may tolerate a chemical because it has different digestive enzymes, gut microbes, liver metabolism, or feeding behavior. Some animals swallow fruit but pass the seed quickly. Others eat only one part of a plant. A monkey may take a few bites and move on, while a hungry human eats an entire basket. The animal provides a clue, not permission. This means ancient plant selection probably worked through combinations of evidence. What does it taste like? What does it smell like? Which part are animals eating? How much do they eat? Do they return to it repeatedly? Are they eating the ripe fruit but avoiding the leaves? Does the food appear only during one season? Did anyone in the group eat it before? And most importantly, what happened afterward? That last question created the real database. Imagine one person eats a new fruit. Nothing happens immediately. Several hours later, they begin vomiting. Other group members remember. The fruit receives a warning, perhaps a gesture, a sound, a name. Do not eat the red fruit near the river. Now imagine someone else eats the fruit from a similar-looking tree and remains healthy. The group needs to distinguish the two. One has smooth bark. The other has pale spots. One grows beside water. The other grows on dry slopes. One produces fruit before the rains. The other ripens afterward. Survival depends on noticing the correct detail. The natural world is full of close resemblances. Two plants may share leaf shape while belonging to completely different chemical worlds. A young plant may look different from its mature form. One safe species may grow beside a poisonous relative. Leaves change color. Flowers appear briefly. Fruit may exist for only a few weeks. Identification was not simply recognizing a photograph. It meant knowing the entire life of the plant, where it grew, when it appeared, what its bark looked like, what happened when the stem was broken, which insects visited it, which animals ate it, which part was collected, and how it had to be prepared. The same plant could provide both food and poison. A ripe fruit may be safe, while the unripe fruit is not. The flesh may be edible, while the seed contains dangerous compounds. Young leaves may be usable after boiling, while mature leaves become too chemically defended. The root may be safe only after the outer layer is removed. The plant may become more toxic during drought. A small portion may be tolerated while a large meal causes illness. So, the useful unit of knowledge was not merely, this plant is edible. It was closer to, this part of this plant, collected at this stage, from this location, during this season, and prepared in this particular way, is edible in this amount. That is not a fact. That is a procedure. And procedures are much harder to discover than objects. Suppose a group finds a large underground root. It contains valuable starch, but it also causes sickness when eaten raw. The first people who try it may reject the entire species. That would be reasonable. But then, something changes. Perhaps pieces are accidentally left in water. Perhaps rain floods a collection pit. Perhaps someone pounds the root before throwing it away. Perhaps fragments fall near a fire. Perhaps the group notices that animals chew part of the plant but discard another part. One day, somebody combines several actions. Bale it, cook it, soak it, wash it, heat it. The sickness does not appear. The poisonous plant has not changed species. Human behavior has changed its chemistry. This may be one of the greatest themes in the history of food. Ancient humans did not survive only by discovering plants that were naturally ready to eat. They learned how to convert difficult plants into food. Heat can weaken plant tissues and reduce certain harmful compounds. Water can carry away chemicals that dissolve. Pounding breaks cell structures. Peeling removes plant parts that may contain higher concentrations of defensive compounds. Fermentation allows microbes and plant enzymes to transform substances before they enter the body. Drying can reduce moisture and change chemical conditions. None of these methods makes every toxic plant safe. Applying a random process to an unknown plant is not protection. But once a community discovered a successful sequence, that sequence could turn an unusable resource into a reliable food. Consider cassava. Cassava belongs to a much later agricultural story, not the earliest period of human evolution. So it is not direct evidence of what the first foragers did. But it demonstrates the complexity plant knowledge can reach. Cassava roots contain compounds capable of releasing cyanide. Some varieties require extensive preparation. Communities developed methods involving combinations of peeling, grating, soaking, fermenting, squeezing, drying, and cooking. Skip important steps, especially with more toxic varieties, and the food can cause serious poisoning. Follow the inherited process, and the same plant can support enormous populations. No single person needs to understand cyanogenic compounds. They need to know the rule. Grate it this way. Leave it in water for this long. Do not shorten the process because everyone is hungry. The chemistry can remain invisible while the culture remains correct. This creates an important lesson. Ancient people did not need scientific explanations to practice effective science. They could observe, compare, repeat, change one action, watch the result, keep the procedures that worked, reject the ones that failed. The theory might involve spirits, ancestors, balance, or sacred rules. But beneath the explanation could be a method refined through generations of evidence. Do not eat this plant before the rains. Do not cook it in a closed container. Discard the first water. Never give the unprocessed root to a child. A rule may appear ceremonial to an outsider while secretly performing food safety. Ritual can preserve information even when the original reason has been forgotten. The rule survives because breaking it produces consequences. But we should not romanticize this process. Ancient knowledge was impressive. It was not perfect. People were poisoned. Children ate the wrong berries. Hungry groups shortened preparation. Travelers misidentified plants. Famine forced people to consume foods they normally avoided. A method that worked in one region failed with a different species elsewhere. Some toxins caused immediate pain, making the lesson obvious. Others acted slowly and confused the connection between plant and illness. Suppose several people share a meal. 2 become sick. The others do not. Was it the root? The water? Spoiled meat? The person who prepared it? The season? The portion size? Without controlled experiments, the wrong explanation could survive. Humans did not walk through nature, accumulating only correct information. They accumulated beliefs. Some were accurate. Some were partially accurate. Some were unnecessary. Some may have made the food less safe rather than more. The reason communities survived was not that they never made mistakes. It was that useful knowledge could accumulate despite mistakes, and the cost of discovering it was paid by real bodies. Every safe wild food tradition may hide a long history of forgotten illness. We see only the successful rule. We rarely see the person whose suffering created it. That is one reason the phrase trial and error sounds too gentle. The trial was a meal. The error could be a funeral. So how did knowledge become reliable enough to support entire communities? Through social learning. A young child did not enter the forest alone and personally test every mushroom. The child followed adults, watched which leaves they collected, learned which trees were ignored, observed how roots were dug, saw which parts were discarded, helped wash, pound, and cook food, repeated these actions in play, asked questions, received warnings, and occasionally reached toward the wrong berry while an older person reacted with enough urgency to make the memory permanent. Studies of living hunter-gatherer communities cannot be copied directly backward into the Stone Age. Modern groups have their own histories, neighbors, trade relationships, and changing environments. But they show what human learning can look like without formal classrooms. Children often learn subsistence skills by observing, imitating, participating, practicing, and moving through the landscape with more experienced people. Among Bayaka communities in the Congo Basin, researchers have documented children learning plant foraging, mushroom collection, cooking, and tool use by accompanying adults and older children. Young learners do not need a lecture containing the chemical formula of every toxin. They need repeated exposure to correct behavior. Take this one, leave that one, cut here. Smell this. Watch the underside of the leaf. Never collect the mushroom growing near that tree. The forest becomes a classroom whose lessons can bite back. Human childhood is unusually long, partly because becoming a competent human takes time. A predator may rely heavily on instinct. Humans depend on enormous quantities of locally specific information. A child born in a desert needs different plant knowledge from a child born in a tropical forest. Neither can inherit a complete list genetically. Genes can provide curiosity, caution, memory, taste perception, and the ability to learn. Culture supplies the names. This means the safest food was often not the plant that looked most appealing. It was the plant recognized by someone experienced. Older adults could be extraordinarily valuable. A strong young person might gather more food in one day. An elder might remember what happened during the drought 30 years earlier, where the hidden roots remained, which emergency foods required extra processing, which valley contained a plant that looked harmless but caused weakness 2 days later. Knowledge of rare events becomes more useful as a person lives longer. The plant that appears every year is easy to learn. The plant needed only during famine may be remembered by the people who survived the previous famine. A group containing older knowledge holders carries an environmental archive. Their memories can feed people during conditions younger members have never encountered. Specialists may also have emerged. One person becomes unusually skilled at identifying mushrooms. Another understands medicinal leaves. Someone knows roots. Someone else knows how to prepare a dangerous seed. Knowledge does not need to be distributed equally to benefit the group. But specialization creates dependence. When a knowledgeable person dies, information can disappear. This may explain why plant knowledge became attached to stories, songs, taboos, rituals, and repeated practice. Memory needs structure. A list of unrelated botanical facts is difficult to preserve. A story is easier. The tree beside the place where an ancestor became ill. The bitter root collected only after a particular bird returns. The berry associated with a dangerous spirit. The song sung during a long preparation process. The story may not sound scientific, but it organizes time, place, action, and consequence. Language transformed plant knowledge. Without language, one person can imitate another. With language, the group can communicate about things that are absent. Do not eat the yellow fruit found beyond the ridge. The leaves resemble this plant, but the stem contains white sap. The root is safe only after several changes of water. The berries will not harm you immediately, but they cause sickness later. These warnings exceed what simple observation can teach. Language allowed humans to describe delayed effects and invisible conditions. It turned one person's experience into another person's caution. Names also reduced confusion. The word for a plant could include more than its appearance. It could carry an entire network of knowledge. Food, medicine, poison, season, habitat, preparation, myth, ownership. The name became a compressed survival file. Then humans migrated. This created one of the most dangerous botanical challenges imaginable. Leave a familiar landscape, and much of the inherited food map becomes unreliable. The new region contains unfamiliar plants. Familiar-looking relatives may contain different compounds. Seasonal timing changes. Animals behave differently. A safe preparation may not work on a new species. Migration did not mean humans forgot everything. General skills remained useful. Observe animals. Compare plant structures. Avoid large amounts of unfamiliar food. Pay attention to taste and smell. Experiment with processing. Remember, delayed illness. But local knowledge had to be rebuilt. Contact with other human groups could accelerate that process. People exchanged objects, mates, stories, routes, and food knowledge. A family entering unfamiliar territory might learn more from one local guide in a day than through months of dangerous experimentation. Which roots remain during winter? Which nuts must be washed? Which mushrooms appear after rain? Which tree produces edible fruit? Human survival was rarely a story of isolated genius. It was a story of information moving between people. Archaeology gives us only fragments of this plant world. Animal bones preserve well enough to dominate museum displays. Stone spear points survive. A roasted leaf does not have the same long-term commitment to becoming a fossil. Roots decay. Baskets disappear. Wooden digging tools vanish. This creates the illusion that ancient people ate mostly meat because the bones remain while the salad quietly returns to the soil. Researchers have developed ways to recover some of the missing evidence. Charred seeds may survive. Microscopic starch grains can remain trapped on grinding stones. Plant particles can become embedded in dental calculus. Tools preserve wear patterns and residues. Silica structures made by plants can remain after softer tissues disappear. These traces reveal that ancient humans did not merely pick fruit and chew leaves. They crushed seeds, ground grains, processed roots, used stones repeatedly to transform plant foods. At Ohalo, an ancient camp beside the Sea of Galilee, researchers recovered starch grains from a grinding stone, showing the processing of wild grass seeds more than 20,000 years ago, long before those cereals were domesticated. At Majidbebe in northern Australia, grinding tools provide evidence of intensive plant processing extending back tens of thousands of years. The exact plants and methods varied. The larger message does not. Plant food knowledge was sophisticated long before farming. The first farmers did not invent the idea that plants could be selected, transformed, stored, and managed. They inherited a vast foraging tradition. Agriculture later changed the scale. People began favoring certain plants, saving seeds, clearing competing vegetation, moving useful species closer to settlements. Over generations, human selection changed plants themselves. Wild ancestors became crops. The plant safety problem did not disappear. It moved into a new phase. People favored varieties that tasted better, produced more food, ripened reliably, shattered less easily, or contained fewer defensive compounds. Domestication was partly the process of teaching plants to become easier for humans to eat. But even domesticated plants could remain chemically complicated. Many familiar foods still require cooking or processing. Our kitchens are full of ancient solutions whose original dangers have become invisible. Grinding, soaking, fermenting, boiling, peeling, discarding water, removing seeds, waiting for fruit to ripen. These actions feel ordinary because thousands of generations already performed the dangerous part of the experiment. You inherited the successful version. This brings us back to the 3 red berries. You are still holding them. The group is still hungry. You look at the birds. They have eaten berries from the first bush. That is useful, but not enough. You smell each fruit. The second has an unfamiliar odor. That is useful, but not enough. You touch the 3rd berry to your lips. It is bitter. That is useful, but still not enough. Then an older woman reaches across and knocks all 3 from your hand. She points farther uphill. There is another bush near a pale rock. Its berries look almost identical, but those are the ones your group eats. Only after the rains. Only when the fruit has darkened. Never the seed. The child stops crying when the food is brought back. No one performs a chemical analysis. No one writes down the discovery. No one knows the name of the compound avoided. But everyone survives the meal. Tomorrow, the children will be shown the same bush. Years later, they will stop someone else from making the same mistake. That is how ancient humans knew which plants were safe. Not because their instincts were perfect. Not because animals gave them reliable answers. Not because every poisonous plant tasted bitter. And not because one brave person tested the entire forest. They knew because humans turned individual experience into collective memory. They used taste as a warning, animals as clues, tools and fire as chemical technology, language as storage, stories as maps, elders as libraries, and communities as a survival system larger than any one mind. The first guidebook was not written on paper. It was carried in people. Every edible root had a history. Every safe preparation contained an experiment. Every warning preserved a consequence. The forest was full of food, but it was also full of traps. The human advantage was not that we could immediately tell the difference. It was that once someone learned the difference, the rest of the group did not have to discover it from the beginning. The safest plant was not always the sweetest. It was not always the one animals ate. It was not even the one growing closest to camp. The safest plant was the one another human had already encountered, prepared, survived, remembered, and taught you not to fear.